Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching The World Report. Let's first take a look at our top stories. UN Chief Antonio Guterres warns against Trump's statements regarding Gaza. This comes after Trump claims he wants to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. Trump's statements received global backlash amid worries of forced displacement of Palestinians. Ukraine sees a marked improvement in the accuracy of North Korean missiles. Meanwhile, the Kremlin calls for Zelensky's readiness for direct talks with Putin to end fighting in Ukraine. India's foreign minister tells Parliament he is working with the US to ensure Indian citizens are not mistreated during deportation flights. This follows a US military flight returning 104 Indians accused of entering the country illegally, amid reports of deportees handcuffed for up to 40 hours. New reports reveal that Rwanda-backed M23 rebels have launched a new offensive in the Democratic Republic of Congo. This comes as the UN states that more than 100 female prisoners were raped and burned alive during a jailbreak in the Congolese city of Goma on Monday. US President Donald Trump has once again shocked the world with a bold and controversial proposal to take over Gaza, displacing Palestinians and transforming the war-torn region into what he called the Riviera of the Middle East. These comments made during Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Washington have ignited a wave of global outrage. The UN condemned the plans as unlawful and immoral. Spain reaffirmed Gaza's role in a future Palestinian state, while Irish officials expressed scepticism, particularly over Trump's suggestions to relocate Palestinians, which contradicts UN resolutions. France, Poland and the UAE also opposed the plans, citing violations of international law. In response, the White House clarified that the US would not send troops or fund Gaza's reconstruction. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt described the plan as an out-of-the-box idea for lasting peace, while Secretary of State Marco Rubio emphasised it was a generous proposal, not a hostile move. Joining us first to discuss this story, we are joined by Yossi Kalpawasi, who is a former head of research at the IF Defence Intelligence, joining us from Israel. Yossi, thank you very much for your time. We've heard the feeling there from around the world, but I want to understand the feeling within Israel regarding the statement that Trump's made.
Good afternoon. The feeling in Israel is that this is a really out-of-the-box proposal that has to be looked upon, and because this, for the first time, is an idea that may put an end to those terror attacks from Gaza Strip that are hitting Israel again and again and again, and we finish every round with Hamas rearming itself and getting ready to launch a new hostile attack against Israel. So it's this is an idea that may lead us to the end of this kind of situation in Gaza. And on top of that, it is providing a solution for the people of Gaza, because Gaza has suffered a lot in this last war, and it's going to be very difficult to reconstruct Gaza as it is while the population is there.
Also joining us to discuss this is Gautam Mukherjee, a senior journalist. Gautam, thank you very much for joining us as well. What does this mean for Palestinians? Of course, they've had such a long period, specifically those not affiliated with Hamas, such a long period under fire, displacement of millions, and now potentially the threat of being moved out of their country.
Well, it's really aimed at the Hamas rather than the Palestinians, because the Hamas are embedded there with the connivance and the cooperation of the Palestinians. It's the Hamas that runs the Gaza Strip. And even though they have been, pounded for a year and a half, they still exist. They still hold hostages. They still have miles of tunnels into which they hide. They still have stockpiles of weapons. So all of this needs to come apart once and for all. And since the Palestinians are inextricably wound up with the Hamas, and they've allowed Hamas to take over the Strip, you have to disentangle the two. And in order to do so, Trump has come up with an out-of-the-box proposal. Now, having said that, if you look at some of his other proposals, he has an opening gambit, which usually produces results, as it has done in Canada and Mexico, not so much in China, which wants to contest. But both Mexico and Canada have come to the table, have quickly adopted some of the demands made by Trump. Similarly, I'm sure quite a few of Trump's demands with regard to Gaza, beyond this sort of sensational headline, will be met by the Palestinians as well as the Hamas. And then modifications of this plan to actually go there and turn it into a zone controlled by the Americans. There are also domestic issues that are not too happy with the idea of boots on the ground. So I think Trump knows all this, but I think he'll achieve a great deal before he dilutes the proposal.
Yes. Also joining us is Ross Feingold, a political risk analyst joining from Taiwan. Ross, thank you for your time. I want to look at the almost contradiction that's coming from the States. We've had Trump, who previously said that the Gazans and Palestinians wouldn't move home, but then Marco Rubio, Caroline Leavitt have both said that it would be temporary. What do you think the end goal will be for the United States in regards to moving Palestinians?
Ultimately, what the Trump administration is most concerned about is Israel's security. And I think the Trump administration has made that clear, even though they've only been in office for a few short weeks. So when we're discussing what's going to become of the residents of Gaza, I think we have to look at it through the lens of Israel's security and what's best to safeguard Israel's security and what's best to prevent Hamas from regenerating itself in Gaza and attacking Israel again. So if it's whether it's temporary or long-term, Trump administration has excellent communications, I think, with Egypt, with Jordan, with the Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia. So yeah, in a way, I agree that this is just an opening gambit. It's probably not going to work out as simply as President Trump described it at a news conference. But there is the possibility that the Trump administration is going to put pressure on some of the neighboring countries to accept some of the Palestinian population. And those countries might have no choice but to cave into pressure from the Trump administration and admit large numbers of refugees on a long-term or possibly even a permanent basis.
Thank you very much, Ross Feingold, and thank you very much to Gautam Mukherjee as well for joining us. And also thank you, Yossi Kupawasa. We now move on and we're looking at opposition lawmakers in India who are demanding answers from Prime Minister Modi's government after 104 Indian immigrants were allegedly mistreated during their deportation from the United States. The deportees sent back on a US military aircraft landed in Amritsar, Punjab, just ahead of President Trump's scheduled meeting with Modi in Washington next week. Reports have emerged claiming that all adult deportees were shackled throughout the flight, subjected to intense scrutiny upon arrival and escorted out in small groups by police. These reports have sparked outrage across political parties in India, with lawmakers raising concerns over the treatment of the deportees, which they describe as disregarding. The issue is being brought to the forefront just as immigration continues to be a sensitive topic in the US-India relations. President Trump's administration has increasingly used military resources to enforce its immigration policies, including deporting migrants via military aircraft and housing them on military bases. And the Trump administration has defended these measures as part of its broader immigration agenda. Indians aren't the only ones facing the brunt of Donald Trump's deportation policies. Illegal immigrants from Mexico have faced the same treatment, with them being shackled on flights back. Joining us to discuss this, we have been joined by Surinder Singh Lally, who is an international affairs expert. Thank you very much for your time, Surinder. Do you think this is a behaviour that we're seeing from the States across the board with countries, or do you think this is something specifically that has targeted Indian people and Indian migrants who have been returned?
It's such a pleasure and honor for me to be here. There was a movie in 1997 called Con Air. It's a very famous Nicolas Cage movie in which, they're trying to transport a lot of serious criminals from one part of America to the other. And during that process, these criminals try to take over the plane and they try to run out of the geographical boundaries of North America. Now, why am I telling you this? This is the movie Donald Trump spoke about 3 weeks ago at the GOP Congress convention. And let me quote Donald Trump further. He says, on that plane, there were murderers, drug lords, king of some kind of head of the mob, and gangsters put close. Now, what's the similarity between the two? The way, in a very disgraceful, inhumane manner, women, children, and Indians have been packed in a military plane, shackled throughout the flight, with one bathroom on it, and very disgracefully deported back to India. He is playing to the script. He is simply catering to his constituency, where this was part of his election campaign, that he is going to make America safe. And with one brush, he kind of goes and paints every immigrant who's illegal for whatever reasons. And by the way, being illegal in America can be very layered too, but he has painted all of them with one brush. It's not that Indians have not been deported. From 2009 to 2025, 15,721 people have come back, but not in the manner in which Donald Trump has created the optics to his constituency, that I'm here, I mean business, and I will do business at any cost. So this is Donald Trump for the world. This is the mercurial Donald Trump, who can go to any extent to create the optics. And my last concluding point is that I think before he goes lame duck after the midterm, he and the courts step into a lot of decision what he's been taking. In the last discussion, Gautam Mukherjee said that he thinks out of the box. On a note of levity, I don't think there is a box for Donald Trump. He can think in any direction. He simply shoots and scoots and sees how it pans out, and then he tries to bring back people on the table. Even with the Israel, the recent comments in Gaza. I mean, this morning, I believe White House backtracked, where and said that neither are we willing to put boots on the ground, and nor are we willing to put in the money. And nor has he spoken to, Egypt or Jordan, and Saudi Arabia has also given a statement otherwise.
Yes,
So
Surrender, apologies to interrupt you. I do want to bring it back, of course, to the discussion relating to India, and we are running short on time. Joining us again is Gautam Mukherjee. Gautam, we're looking here at a potential relationship between India and America that seems like it was blossoming. The meeting in Washington with Narendra Modi, of course, taking place there, meeting Donald Trump. Do you think that the treatment of these returnees, potentially spending up to 40 hours shackled, do you think this will play a part in those conversations? And how do you think it might impact US-India relations?
Well, one thing's for sure. I mean, you do not want a Con Air situation. And so keeping them shackled is one way to keep them from doing anything while they're flying back. So I think in that sense, it's a wonderful idea. Perhaps they need to go in planes with more bathrooms and a little more cooperation from the guards should they need to eat or drink or go to the bathroom. But having said that, these illegal immigrants have gone through great pains. They've gone through multiple countries. They've paid a fortune. They've tried to sneak in, and they've been caught and they're being deported. And I think it's all fairness. I think we should be doing this to 4 crore Bangladeshis in our country. We don't seem to have the guts to do this kind of thing. However, an opening gambit has been made by the External Affairs Minister in Parliament, who said it is the duty of each country that has its citizens going to other places illegally to accept them back. Now, let's hope Bangladesh feels the same way, because we certainly need to deport 1 massive quantity of Bangladeshis. As for the Americans deporting not just Indians, but Colombians and Mexicans and all sorts of other people, I say good luck to them.
Gautam Mukherjee and Surinder Singh Lally, thank you very much, both of you, for your time. As of course we head towards Modi with meeting Trump, we will of course bring you the latest. But we're now going to take a look at the latest news from across the Indo-Pacific region. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba will visit the United States. Ishiba will seek reassurance on the United States-Japan alliance amid concerns over Trump's America First policies. He may also propose increasing US natural gas imports to address Japan's energy needs. Ishiba has stressed the importance of US defence ties, pointing to threats on Japan's doorstep concerning China. Reportedly, Trump and Ishiba are expected to affirm the importance of peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra met in Beijing to strengthen bilateral ties, marking the 50th anniversary of China-Thailand diplomatic relations. They discussed expanding cooperation in areas such as digital economy, electric vehicles and a high-speed railway connecting Bangkok and Kunming. The leaders also addressed concerns over online fraud and safety. Xi praised Thailand's efforts to combat online scams and emphasised the need for continued law enforcement cooperation to protect citizens and property. Protesters in Bangladesh have vandalised and set fire to the former family home of deposed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, as well as those other members of her party. The unrest was sparked by news that Hasina would address the country via social media from India, where she has been in exile since student-led protests ousted her last year. Hasina condemned the attack and demanded justice. Turkey commemorates the second anniversary of the February 6, 2023 earthquake, which claimed nearly 60,000 lives, including in neighbouring Syria, and turned cities into ruins. Thousands of residential buildings in southeastern Turkey collapsed in the wake of the 7.8 magnitude quake that hit at just after 4 a.m, killing many in their sleep. In remembrance, thousands have called for gatherings across the 11 affected provinces. South Korean authorities said that all airports across the country will be ordered to install bird detection cameras and radars after the Jeju air crash that left 179 people dead. Mobile sonic devices will also be implemented mainly to deal with medium and large-sized birds. The radar will detect the size of the bird and its movement paths, and this information will be relayed to air traffic control, who in turn will communicate with the pilot. Thousands gathered in New Zealand to commemorate the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi, the country's founding document, but some called for an end to government policies seen as undermining Maori rights. The Conservative government, elected in 2023, has rolled back policies aimed at improving Maori living conditions, which has led to strained relations with the community. Protests at the Waitangi highlighted ongoing grievances, particularly over the Treaty Principles Bill, which seeks to redefine the treaty's interpretation. Adding on to our stories from the United States, as US President Donald Trump has taken another step that is gaining controversy. On Wednesday, Trump signed an executive order banning transgender athletes from competing in women's sports, citing the protection of female athletes. The order threatens schools with the loss of federal funding if they go against it. Here is the full update.
We've gotten the woke lunacy out of our military. And now we're very importantly getting it out of women's sports. That's taking place very strongly.
On Wednesday, US President Donald Trump signed an executive order banning transgender athletes from participating in women's sports, framing it as a defense of female athletics.
Under the Trump administration, we will defend the proud tradition of female athletes, and we will not allow men to beat up, injure, and cheat our women and our girls. From now on, women's sports will be only for women.
The order mandates that schools risk losing federal funding if they allow transgender athletes to compete in women's teams or use their locker rooms. Trump also announced plans to pressure the International Olympic Committee to change its policies ahead of the 2028 Los Angeles Games. He instructed Secretary of State Marco Rubio to convey to the IOC that the US wanted them to completely revise their policies regarding transgender athletes in the Olympics. Additionally, Trump directed Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem to block visa applications from men who might attempt to enter the US by falsely identifying as women athletes to compete in the Games. His executive order on Wednesday comes after the Republican-led House of Representatives in January passed a bill severely restricting transgender athletes from participating in girls' and women's sports. This move is part of a broader pattern of policies that limit transgender rights, including bans on transgender military service and restrictions on gender-affirming care for minors. Critics argue that the belief transgender girls have an unfair advantage in sports is based on misconceptions, as physical abilities vary widely among all athletes, regardless of gender. Bureau Report, NewsX.
We'll now take a look at the latest updates from across the continent of Europe. The Lombardy cinema in Kosovo, vital for local cultural exchange, faced a setback after the EU cancelled a crucial €1.5 million grant due to tensions linked to Kosovo's government. EU sanctions on Kosovo, imposed over ethnic disputes in the north, have stalled over €150 million in projects. As elections approach, PM Kurti's policies continue to spark debate. The sanctions have hit everyday Kosovans hard, including the halt of vital infrastructure projects like a sewage treatment plant. Grenfell Tower, where 72 people died in a 2017 fire, is to be demolished. Deputy British Prime Minister Angela Rayner announced the decision after meeting bereaved families. The tower, structurally deteriorating, will be taken down after the tragedy's 8th anniversary in June. Some families and survivors criticised the decision, saying their voices were ignored during a brief consultation. A future memorial will be designed by 2026. Spain seeks the EU's approval to redirect over €1 billion of post-pandemic recovery funds for climate projects in Valencia. The funds will repair water systems and develop desalination plants amid droughts and water shortages. Companies like Acciona and Saca see growth in Spain's water infrastructure sector. Negotiations are ongoing as Spain works to address its water crisis and enhance climate resilience. Italy confirmed 7 mobile users were targeted by spyware on WhatsApp. The National Cybersecurity Agency is investigating. Among the victims were a journalist and an activist, Luca Cassani, who received an alert from WhatsApp. Meta accused US-based Paragon Solutions of using a zero-click hack to steal data. The incident has raised privacy concerns, and investigations continue into the attackers. French Prime Minister Francois Bayrou survived 2 no-confidence votes, ensuring the passage of the delayed 2025 budget. The budget is key to addressing France's debt. The far-right and socialists did not back the motions, falling short of the required votes. Bayrou used special constitutional powers to push the budget through, despite controversy over his immigration comments. The budget aims to reduce the deficit and increase taxes on the wealthy amid ongoing political instability. Swedish police have found several licensed rifles linked to the suspect Rickard Andersson at the scene of a mass shooting in Örebro's Riviera Adult Educational Centre. The attack left 11 dead and others injured. Andersson is believed to have acted alone. Police found no ideological motives. The attack shocked Sweden, already dealing with gang-related gun violence, while Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson has called for a political unity in response to the tragedy. That is all we have time for, but we'll be back very soon with more of your latest international news.